Good morning. Welcome to the Community Voice. I'm Steve Gradick, your host. Delighted to have you with us on this beautiful Thursday, not my normal day. I'm sure everybody's pleased to to hear from me on a Thursday. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. We've got a special program today. Our good friend James Camp of GA2A, Georgia's Second Amendment, has agreed to come in. He's on the board of directors there. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming in. A little bit of short notice, and I'm most appreciative of that.
Always.
I wanted to, one reason I wanted you to come in, the news stories now are centered around, at least in the 36-hour news cycle, and then we'll go to something else. But right now they're centered around to Hunter Biden being convicted on 3 counts of felony counts for or for checking or not checking correctly, apparently, a federal form where he was to admit that he was a drug addict or under some sort of rehab. And so the issue has surfaced as to why and to what degree is that constitutional, if at all?
Well, I think a good lesson is to be learned from this is that if you're committing crimes, don't publish it in a book, for crying out loud. Yeah. Hunter Biden was convicted for pretty much lying on a federal form. Now, whether or not that's constitutional, I don't think that question really is constitutional. I know some people are especially going to groan about that, with it being Hunter Biden and everything. But think about it. When you look at the question on the federal form, it's asking you if you're a habitual user of a controlled substance. And I think that would be a Fifth Amendment violation right there, because it's basically requiring you to bear witness against yourself against a supposed criminal activity.
Okay. And I don't. But now, if you're a convicted felon, then you're not allowed to get under federal law a firearm.
That is correct, and unless you can get your rights fully restored, yes, if you're a convicted felon, you're not allowed to have a firearm in your possession, let alone to go buy one.
But the question always is posed if you're a veteran, you come back from the war and you're on pain medications, and unfortunately you tend to get addicted to that. So are you not legally allowed to own a firearm?
That raises a very good question, Steve, and I think that question on the forum does put a lot of people in jeopardy of losing their rights. And in my personal opinion, if you're a habitual user of drugs, whether it be legal or illegal, I don't think that should deny you from your rights. You don't need to be thrown into a concrete cell for being a drug user. You need help.
Well, what if you got several firearms and you get cancer, and now you're on severe pain medication? There seems to be a gross inconsistency here.
Right. And I could see potential abuse from the ATF from this.
Yeah, I want to ask you about the ATF going forward.
And they've been pretty abusive already with their overreach.
Well, since you bring them up, let me go ahead and ask you about ATF, and then we'll circle back to Hunter Biden. I've heard several stories where the ATF will go into different counties, not inform the sheriff, and conduct some sort of raid with multiple agents. Have you heard stories like that?
I've heard some stories, and I've seen some videos where they've been showing up on people's doorsteps, asking them about firearms that they purchased at gun shows and wanting to see those firearms and the transaction, and basically browbeating people into getting them to produce that information. And it's a fishing expedition. Let's be clear what it is. It's a fishing expedition. They're just looking to lock somebody up. And in that situation, you're not under any obligation to provide them with any information. You have a Fifth Amendment right to remain silent and not comply with their wishes. So my advice on that is, if they show up on your doorstep for something bogus like that, is just say, don't even answer the door. Just talk to them through the door and be like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to speak to you at this time. I need to consult with an attorney.
But my point being is that you would seem like, for safety reasons, that they at least would want to inform the sheriff. I mean, he is the constitutional officer and everything, and if you're going to bring some sort of raid into a county, it would seem, if only anything, out of respect
You
and
would
courtesy.
inform the sheriff. Yeah, there would be that interagency cooperation, but yeah, unfortunately, that doesn't happen.
Okay, well,
And it doesn't surprise me, coming from the ATF that's responsible for such debacles as Waco and Ruby Ridge. I mean, come on, they're rogue.
back on the Hunter Biden thing, for those of us who really are not really educated on this. So basically, when you buy a firearm from a store or anywhere, you have to fill out a federal form, correct?
Yes, the form 4473.
Okay. What other questions are on there that you think that might be questionable?
If you've ever been adjudicated mentally defective, I mean, if you've been adjudicated mentally defective, I mean, you essentially go through a judge for that, and they give you due process in that regard and determine, if you need to be committed to a mental facility or not. And I think that would show up in your background check as it is anyway, so I don't really see a need for them to be asking that question.
Okay. So basically, the Second Amendment is very clear. Rights shall not be infringed. But if you have to go through all these questionable questions, then your rights are being to defend yourself and protect yourself.
I think there is some constitutional violations there with some of the questions, and with the Bruen decision, which was just a jackpot home run decision in regards to the Second Amendment. I think it will call into question the constitutionality of some of these questions on the form 4473. Because Bruen pretty much said that in order for there to be any kind of gun control law, it has to be historically congruent of what was passed historically in the United States as far as gun control goes. And Form 4473, as you know, hasn't been around since the founding of the nation. It's just something that come about.
I can't imagine the founders, even conceiving of what we do these days. What one thing, again, kind of keeping it somewhat simple for those of us who are not that educated on this, explain to us how we have the Second Amendment, but every state seemingly has a different set of laws regarding firearms and guns. How is it New York City and Chicago so restrictive, and all that is constitutional, correct?
That is correct. And again, this goes back to the 3 Supreme Court decisions, starting with Heller and then McDonald and then Bruen, kind of getting everybody in line, because the arguments from the state was, and even Georgia was like that for a while, the Georgia courts said that the Second Amendment is not recognized here in the state of Georgia, and that the legislature can make up whatever laws they want in regards to the Second Amendment. And then McDonald basically come along and said that no, the Second Amendment is incorporated to the states have to follow it. And then of course we have Bruen come along saying, okay, you can't have restrictions that are not that are not in line historically with traditional gun control laws.
Okay.
So yeah, we're places like Chicago, New York, and even California are really pushing the limits of Bruen. And I think we're going to see a lot of good outcome come from that once they get up in the higher courts and they get slapped down.
It seems like the Second Amendment is always involved in some sort of court case. I mean, even in our first few minutes, you've cited 3 cases. It just seems like, and you may be so used to it, you're just so used to it, but when you're on the outside looking in, it's just like court case, and a victory here, we lost here, but
The Second Amendment is highly political, and it shouldn't be. That's the sad thing about it.
Yeah, okay. Our guest this morning is James Camp, GA2A, Georgia Second Amendment. He's on the board of directors, and we're talking about the Second Amendment. We're going to talk about a lot more related to that when we return after these words.
Health is a journey. It's making better choices, even when it's not easy. It's taking care of yourself and the people you love. At Tanner Health System, we're there for you with every step, with primary care, heart care, cancer care, women's care, orthopedics, surgical services, and so much more. We're dedicated to helping you live and feel your best. So let's get on that journey to health. You've got places to be for many years to come. Find us at tanner.org.
The AP Scholar Journey at Oak Mountain Academy is designed to provide students with a clearly defined advanced placement curriculum track to earn a series of distinctions upon graduation. This journey enables academically prepared students to pursue college-level studies throughout 17 AP courses in 5 subject categories while enrolled at OMA. I'm Patrick Uran, head of school, inviting you to journey with us on the mountain. For more information, visit us at oakmountain.us. Discover your journey at OMA. Prepare, explore, and achieve.
Good morning. Welcome back to the Community Voice. I'm Steve Gradick, your host. We're also on Facebook Live. We've got James Camp, GA2A board member, and slogan of Georgia's Second Amendment is protecting our civil rights. Last several years, constitutional carry became a big story for a while, and with that. The nuanced part about schools came into play, both university campuses, et cetera. Where are we currently in Georgia? And I do want to talk about the legislative session previously, but let's put schools before that.
Okay.
Where are we when it turns? We talk about school safety, incentivizing teachers and administrators to carry firearms, or at least trained, and et cetera, et cetera. What's the current 2024 status of that kind of issue?
Okay, I'm glad you asked, Steve, because ever since constitutional carry did pass 2 years ago, people have really become complacent and not really concerned with what's been going on at the state, but there has been a lot going on with the state. In regards to school carry, when it comes to K through 12 carry, and I need to go ahead and say this because there's probably a lot of people breaking the law and they don't know this. If you're carrying under the guise of constitutional carry, in other words, you don't have a license to carry, if you're taking a loaded firearm onto a K through 12 campus, you are committing a federal felony by doing that, because there is the Federal Gun-Free School Zone Act that still covers that. And the only exemption to that is if you have a state-issued carry license. Now, if you have a state-issued carry license, Georgia further restricts it to where you can carry on a K through 12 campus, but only while in the transaction of picking up or dropping off a student. And now when it comes to college, the Federal Gun-Free School Zone Act doesn't cover colleges, so it's just completely under state law there. And under state law, you can carry in certain spaces on college campus as long as your firearm remains concealed. And the spaces, they can't be like the college dormitories or classes that have dual enrollment, offices that do disciplinary punishment, and preschool or daycare centers in colleges, and athletic and sporting events on colleges.
So a Georgia weapons license, they're still being issued.
They are still being issued,
but
and
you don't have to have.
You don't have to have it to carry normally in public, but there's still some locations where you still do need it.
Are there other places besides the campus when you're picking up your kids that you need one?
Sure. If you're going to the airport to pick up or drop off somebody, if you're anywhere near the security area, you need to have a license there. It also affords you an out, if you will. In other words, if you're going through the security area and you forgot you've had your firearm on you and you've been found to have your firearm, well, if you have your license, state law allows you to leave the screening area to go secure it, whereas if you don't have a license, that's an immediate violation where you're arrested and carted off to jail. And then the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, it's normally illegal to carry on U.S. Army Corps of Engineer property like the lakes, like I'll use West Point because that's the closest lake to us. So if you're carrying anywhere down there, if you don't have a license, you're breaking the law. And you also got to have permission from the Corps, and they'll only grant permission if you have a license to carry.
I didn't really know all that. When all the news stories came out about constitutional carry.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of nuances that wasn't mentioned with it, and there's still a lot of work with it to make it perfect, so to speak. But, and then the license is also good if you carry out of state. It's recognized in 34 states.
34? That's pretty good.
Yeah.
But I guess I would assume the number of people who are now applying and getting weapons licenses is decreased.
I don't know if it's decreased, but it's still a substantial number, because I look at Sue Horn's paper, the Star News, because she publishes it every month, how many pistol licenses are issued, and it's still in the several hundreds that are issued monthly.
Huh. Well, that's interesting. Well, what about churches? Where are we stand? You mentioned schools, but what about churches?
Thanks for bringing that up. Churches has been a point of contention with the legislature. They don't want to completely remove it off the places off limits list, which I don't understand because churches is the only private property that the state legislature treats differently than everything else. So currently with churches as it stands now, it is illegal to carry on church property unless you have permission from the governing authority of the church to carry a weapon onto their property.
So why would the legislature single out churches?
We never could get a definite answer from them on that. They just it
Don't we
was,
have
it was
a
like
rela-
that. Also with K through 12, when we tried to get them to change the restrictions on that, their thing is they have no appetite for it.
They have what do you mean? They have no appetite.
They have
for
no
it?
appetite.
What does
for
that
it.
mean?
They have no desire to change it.
But you would think, religious liberty and of anything. That doesn't make any sense.
And GA2A, has tried to sue the state of Georgia over it, citing religious liberty is one of the reasons. And unfortunately, the courts they tossed the case out and said that we had no standing and whatnot.
Well, that's kind of like when they shut the churches down during COVID, but Wally World got to stay open. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah, the government picking favorites.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, let's take a look back at the legislative session 2024. Was it a positive or a negative for the Second Amendment, or just
It
neutral?
just about almost ended up negative for the Second Amendment.
Really? Why?
And the legislature almost passed gun control, believe it or not. So GA2A, we've been fighting for the past several years to keep government entities from banning weapons on public property. It was codified in 1996 that cities and counties and municipalities cannot regulate guns as far as carrying and possession. And then the legislature further clarified in 2010 that parks and recreation areas, the cities cannot ban firearms in parks and recreation areas. And they even further clarified it in 2014, saying that if there's a private organization, private entity that leases out public property, they cannot ban firearms. So this has been long-standing legal precedent for years, and even the Supreme Court has the Georgia Supreme Court has backed us up on this and said that that governments cannot lease to private entities and allow them to ban guns on public property. It's just not allowed. So this past session in Senate Bill 36, which was a child sex trafficking bill, had nothing to do with guns. When this bill ended up over in the Judy Non-Civil Committee in the House, the chairman of that committee unfortunately allowed an amendment to be added to that bill that would allow private entities to ban weapons at events that they hold on public property. And I was kind of flummoxed when I found out who the chairman of that committee was. It was Tyler Paul Smith, and I got throw a little shade on him here. I was kind of disappointed to find out that he allowed that to happen. Fortunately, we had a really good friend of ours, Tim Bearden, who was just recently elected to the state senate. I alerted him as to what was going on, and he got involved. And when the bill passed out of non-Judy and went over to rules, we were able to get Rick Jaspers, Mandy Ballinger, and a couple of others to get behind us and get that bill recommitted back to non-Judy to have that language stripped out of it.
I've got Tyler Paul Smith on Monday, so we'll see his thoughts on that.
And another thing that just flummoxed me is that the NRA, they're supposed to be the big premier gun rights group in the nation. They went along with this. They were specifically asked if they were okay with this language, and their lobbyist, Art Tom, confirmed, yes, the NRA was okay with them adding this language to the bill.
Okay, well, I'll be interested to see what Representative Smith says about that. Give us a little inside baseball real quick on that. You mentioned the NRA. It seems like among a lot of pro-Second Amendment groups and NRA, there's always been a little bit of division and consternation between them. Is there not really uniformity among NRA and other gun rights groups?
I would say probably not, because in my experience, the NRA has mostly worked against us down there at the state legislature. I don't know why. Our first year that we were involved in the state legislature in 2008, when we was working with Tim Bearden, when he was on the House side to get House Bill 68 passed, the NRA was dead set against it. They were more concerned about getting their parking lots bill passed instead of our bill, which would have expanded freedom for the Second Amendment more. And and I guess maybe it had something to do at the time. The mantra at the state legislature at the time was that only one gun bill a year gets passed, or one gun bill per session. I don't know if that's the same status quo or not, but that's what we've been told. But the NRA, oddly enough, they were more concerned about letting people carry guns in parking lots than they were letting licensed people carry in parks and restaurants and stuff like that.
I see you do have a effort to lower the minimum age to own a firearm in Georgia. Is that correct?
That is one initiative that we are trying to get behind. It just doesn't make any sense to where even a 17-year-old can sign up and go to war and be handed an automatic weapon to go fight war, but yet that same 17-year-old, they can't go into a store and buy a gun. And even an 18-year-old, they can go in and buy a rifle and a shotgun, but they can't buy a handgun. But same thing, this same 18-year-old can sign up for the armed services and, again, be given a fully automatic weapon and a pistol and everything. It just doesn't make any sense.
Okay, our guest this morning is James Camp, GA2A, Georgia Second Amendment Board of Directors. Got more questions and thoughts with James when we return after this.
Health is a journey. It's making better choices, even when it's not easy. It's taking care of yourself and the people you love. At Tanner Health System, we're there for you with every step, with primary care, heart care, cancer care, women's care, orthopedics, surgical services, and so much more. We're dedicated to helping you live and feel your best. So let's get on that journey to health. You've got places to be for many years to come. Find us at tanner.org.
The customized academic scholar journey at Oak Mountain Academy is individually designed to provide students with a personalized, clearly defined academic track that earns the student a series of distinctions upon graduation. This journey enables academically driven students to pursue a focused, rigorous course of study personalized to their wants and desires. I'm Patrick Uran, head of school, inviting you to journey with us on the mountain. For more information, visit us at oakmountain.us. Discover your journey at OMA. Prepare, explore, and achieve.
All right, welcome back to the Community Voice. I'm Steve Gradick, your host. Delighted to have you with us. And we're with James Camp, Georgia Second Amendment Board of Directors. One question, a little bit kind of on a tangent. I think it was during the Obama administration that the term gun control seemed to morph into the term of gun violence. And language is so important. And I always thought, gun control is pretty clear. You're trying to control the use of guns. But gun violence gives the implication that the guns are committing the
crimes instead of the person.
And so that makes it a little more palatable. I mean, do you pay attention to that, or am I just kind of...
I do a little bit. I try not, and this is just me personally, I try not to get caught up in the language because I know it is for sensationalism, just like the term assault weapon. I mean, come on, assault's an action. It's not a noun. It's a verb, not a noun. Assault is what you do to somebody. A gun itself doesn't get up and assault someone.
Right.
And same thing with, gun control. To me, I view gun control as being able to hit your target. Okay. And then, like with gun violence, when you hear the word gun violence, you're thinking, oh, are these firearms picking themselves up and just randomly shooting at people? It's all sensationalism.
But as Rush used to say, for the low information voter, I mean, it's important. Let me ask you one thing for, again, talking about the low information voter, which I am in a lot in this regard. The president had a speech, I guess it was this week. It's been a long week, but talking about universal background checks. So give us a definition of that. What is that, and why is that a concern?
So what they're going after is with universal background checks, and this also folds into the so-called gun show loophole that they've been screaming about for years. Currently, as it stands now, let's take you and I, for example. We're private individuals. If I want to sell you a firearm, I can sell you a firearm as long as I know that you're not a prohibited person, and you can accept the firearm as long as you knowingly know you're not a prohibited person, and we can complete that transaction between one another without having to submit you to a background check. that is what they're trying to get at with universal gun control. They're trying to stop the private-to-private transactions, even though there are laws on the book that would prohibit a person from selling a firearm to a prohibited person.
Okay. Is there indeed a gun show loophole? And what is it?
That's what they call the gun show loophole. Is
That's
that
the loophole?
that there are some private exhibitors that go there and they sell from their personal collection, and that's one of the areas that the ATF is kind of going rogue on. Is they've been going to these places, to these private to these gun shows where there's private vendors, and kind of beating them up for selling their own collection and calling them gun dealers and saying that they need to have a license to sell and a federal firearms license to sell and conduct background checks. And they need to be more worried about what the ATF does, which is you probably remember Fast and Furious back during the Obama administration. And this was the ATF going into gun shows and buying up all the guns that they could get a hold of,
giving them
and giving them the cartels, sending them across the border to see, how many were going across the border. And there was a border agent that actually
got killed. I can't remember his name.
Brian Terry, I think.
Brian Terry.
Yeah, he was killed from one of those guns that the ATF allowed to go across the border.
And nobody was held accountable for it.
Yeah, nobody was held accountable for it. So the ATF is more of a danger to guns getting in criminal hands than a private person is.
I was trying to think, what is it one private individual cannot sell to another private individual so long as that thing they are selling is legal? I mean, what else can we not sell from one to another without the government?
Raw milk.
Raw milk, is that one of them? Okay. I knew there was something. That's why I asked. Raw milk was it. Okay. Well, that's fascinating stuff. Any other topics that y'all focused on during the previous session?
There is a lawsuit that we're currently a part of. We didn't initiate it, but we joined in with it, and it deals with the city of Savannah. The mayor down there, Van Johnson, they passed a city ordinance basically saying that if you leave a firearm in your car unsecured and your car gets broken into and the firearm gets stolen, then you'll be held accountable for that and not the criminal. And so we're currently party to a lawsuit suing the city of Savannah over that ordinance, and we expect it'll get struck down because, again, this goes back to state preemption, where the state legislature is the only governmental body that can regulate firearms, pretty much, and so the city can't have an ordinance regulating firearms. So we expect to win that. Of course, Van Johnson, he's being real adamant that he's going to win it, and he's going to take it all the way to the Georgia Supreme Court, but he'll get smacked down.
So if you leave your car unlocked because it's not secured, and somebody steals your firearm, and I guess at that point you would report that it had been stolen, then you're going to jail for reporting.
You would be held accountable for that, yes, in the city of Savannah under that
let
ordinance.
me run down there and tell law enforcement that my gun in my unlocked car was stolen, and so you can arrest me. Huh? Okay, well, good luck on that one. Tell us, we're gonna run out of time. Tell us real quick a little bit about GA2A, and if people want to support and get involved, how
Sure,
should they
absolutely.
go?
We'd love to have you. Membership's $25 a year, or if you want to do a life membership, it's $625. We were founded back in the early 2000s, originally called Georgia Carry, because at the time we were focusing on the carry rights in the state. Over time, our focus has kind of shifted to a more broad Second Amendment issues, so that was the reason for the name change to Georgia Second Amendment, but we still focus on carry issues, in fact, all Second Amendment issues now. We are the only grassroots group in the state that is active down at the state legislature, and we're also active in the courts as well. If you go to our website, ga2a.org, you can see a list of all the legislative and judicial accomplishments that we've won over the past years.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming in, James.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Always good. We have you in about once a year, and we're very grateful for the information you bring us. We thank you most of all for listening, and our thanks to our sponsors, Tanner Health System, Oak Mountain Academy. Go out and make it a great Thursday. I'm Steve Gradick, your host. Thank you for listening to WLBB Carrollton.